everybody. Welcome to this DMLab MiMU Gloves special. Very exciting night we have planned for you. It's great to see so many people here. Welcome. Also welcome to everybody online. My name is Tim Yates. I work for Drake Music. I run the Research and Innovation Programme. So I am a white man in my 40s. I've got long hair, a big bushy beard. I'm wearing a blue jumper, blue jeans and orange trainers. Before we get going with the event, there's just a few housekeeping stuff that I need to go through. Online, we have had a few issues with some of the sound, so do let us know in chat if there are any issues with any of that. And please do add comments and questions to chat. We have got Deborah on the chat monitoring it all the time, so if you want to ask any questions, then please do. For those in the building, fire exits are out that way, as are accessible loos. There are also fire exits behind the screen here. The structure of this evening is that we've got two presentations first, then a break, and then a third presentation, which is coming in online. We have over here some MiMU gloves for you to have a go on. There's quite a lot of people in the room, and unfortunately the only time to do that is in that gap between the two, because we're finishing later than usual. We've got a fast get out at the end of the night, and so there'll be time to come and hang around for half an hour and chat and everything, but we will have to take the MiMU gloves down. So if you're absolutely desperate to have a go, please do come up and have a go in the break. And if you don't get a chance, then we'll be able to find other ways for people to have a go on them. They're great that they're here. They're super fun. This is a very exciting night. We've been working with MiMU for something, I was talking to Adam earlier, something like 10 or 11 years. We've been collaborating. I think we got a very early prototype pair of the gloves, I think before they're even a product. And Chris Halpin had those and worked with them and has since made those a big part of his, well, that is the main part of his practice. So we thought now, 10 or 11 years later, is the perfect moment for us to revisit the gloves, see where they are, see what everybody's doing with them, and then find out about the future. This kind of technology is super interesting, super accessible, and so we're really excited that we can have this night to share the work with you and see what the future is. Rylan Gleave is up next, who is a composer and a performer who's going to talk about his journey with the MiMU gloves and perform some of his music. Ryan, please come to the stage. Round of applause for Rylan Gleave and for Adam. We're going to do a little bit of fiddling with microphones. Is handheld, is that okay?
Yeah, can you hear me? Is that better?
Yes, let's do it.
Wonderful.
Fab.
Hi, I'm Rylan. I'm a composer and a performer. In my big platform boots stand about 5'11", but I'm actually really 5'7". And I have a nice big long goth sort of cape, pair of trousers that really do look like a skirt, and a nice big crucifix. It's lovely to be here. I'm going to do a very quick tech check, because whilst this was working earlier, some problems that I have personally as an artist using the MiMU Glove technology is that there is a lot of, oh no, is my laptop dead? My laptop might be dead. Bear with me 2 seconds while I get my charger. My bag's just here, so it's okay. I have a lot of problems connecting to MiMU technology because I came up through the sort of classical tradition. And a lot of the work that I have done has been as a composer. So I work kind of taking commissions for orchestras and chamber ensembles and choirs. And I think it was maybe 2017 that I got asked to join a metal band and use kind of like the heavy, screamy vocals. There's a band called Ashenspire. If anyone knows them, I really love doing that sort of stuff. And that coincided with my voice dropping as I transitioned. So I got really into like extended vocal techniques, different ways of sort of making noise with my voice, which is all super cool and interesting. And a lot of that has kind of moved me through my practice to the sort of music that I make now, which I guess still has like a blend of classical and I guess like contemporary classical. If anyone's sort of in those scenes, there's often influences from like doom and rock and ambient. I also sing with a punk jazz ensemble in Germany. That's a lot of fun. Yeah, so I like working collaboratively, kind of with a lot of these groups. Also with Para Orchestra, if anyone knows them. I'm just off the back of a project with them, which was absolutely fab. And I really like performing as a soloist. And normally I do that as a singer and keyboard player with like my laptop as a sort of electronic setup. But the problem, oh, this looks like it's going to work. That's really exciting. The problem that I've been having is that I have a condition called Ehlers Danlos Syndrome. And it means that my joints are quite liable to dislocate, often quite randomly, sometimes unprompted. And that can be really hard when you're performing, particularly if you're doing metal stuff and you're like running around on stage and suddenly your ankle goes and then you're on the floor. And metal audiences really like that. So like there's a sense of engagement with them, which is great. But I found in the classical scenes, they kind of panic, they get a little bit scared. And so I've been looking at different ways of integrating tech into my practice that eventually say I did have sort of longer term problems with things like with wrist or like finger joints. It would be a little easier for me to still make music as not just a vocalist, as sort of like a vocalist plus. So I've worked a little bit with other people sort of in collaboration with the MiMU Glove technology. I worked with a deaf artist called Benedetta Zanetti back in 2022. We won something called the Craig Armstrong Award. And we did a piece sort of bridging the gap between hearing and deaf worlds and sort of visual and sonic narratives. And my idea originally was to do this with verb modulation in British Sign Language, which I love. I think it's fascinating. We're gonna have a little interplay now. But if I was to say, oh, I waited for the bus, it was maybe 5 minutes. See, the sign here we have is like wait. It's quite small, it's kind of little, we didn't wait for a super long time. If I said, I waited for the bus for like 45 minutes, the sign changes, the sign gets bigger, the face changes, the air puffs in the cheeks. There's a very visual difference between those things. And I got really interested about the idea of linking up those gestures to the gloves and seeing if we could make this sonic visual narrative, pairing all of this stuff together. And there were a couple of issues that I ran into, namely that the gloves really found it hard to recognize grammatically correct BSL. They were quite good with the hand shapes, but they would confuse some of the hand shapes if they weren't sort of trained correctly. Often, Benny, who I was working with, she'd do a really beautiful gesture, and visually it'd be perfect. There was something in that sonic narrative that just kind of wouldn't match. There'd be like the way she'd do it every time would be slightly different, so it just kind of wouldn't always map. I'm also an autistic artist, and I find that my processing speed for a lot of technology is very slow. So if she was having then an issue with her hearing aid and the sort of lag coming from the sound, I'd be a bit frozen on the spot. I'd be like, well, I don't really know how to fix this. So I think it was the basis for the start of something really, really interesting. But I think it showed me that if I was to use the gloves in collaboration with other people, I really needed to get to grips with doing it on my own first. So yeah, that's a little bit of what I'm going to share with you today. I'm going to put these on now and see if they're going to make any sound. So fingers crossed, hold your breath.
I think we have sound. There we go, right.
Thank you so much for your patience. There's reverb, that's good. So I'll very quickly break down what each of my hands are actually doing. So on my left hand, I've got the pinch and roll gesture. It shouldn't be crackling that much, but we'll lean into it. We'll embrace it. And this adds like a sort of kind of vinyl hiss crackle. Or it should. And that is also tied to the reverb that I'm putting on my voice sort of through this microphone. And it's back. And I've also got a vocal formant tied to a pinch and roll gesture on this hand as well. So when I sing into this microphone, that will change the sound. On my right hand as well, I've got some chords. I've got a lush kind of A, should be an A chord. Nice. And that's like kind of like a synth pad that I found on Ableton. And I've got 3 on here, so this is my A chord, and then should be a G chord, larger G chord. E chord as well. And all of these are tied to like the yaw, so kind of how I'm moving from left to right. So essentially when I move it, there's like a direction to it, like it's tied to the sort of wet, dry resonance, if people know what that means. And that kind of is across this sort of axis across the front of my body. And then on my left hand, I've got a bass sound, which is a little tricky to pin down and is not sounding. But it should sound so that when I punch left, there's like a G. And when I pull down, there should be a D, I'm pretty sure. But I'm not getting anything. And I'm actually not sure if that's my setup or MiMU more generally. Sometimes the gesture is a little hard for them to recognize. Oh, there we go. So yeah, I've got a sort of work in progress. There's a lot of chords now. I'm going to sort of semi-improvise the lyrics. I'm going to show you some of the extended vocal techniques that I've been doing. But I was reading on my train down about the Gabriel hounds who used to haunt Sheffield. And it was kind of people reporting that like they'd hear dogs above them up in the clouds at night, which I thought was fascinating. So I'm kind of loosely bearing that in mind. Yeah, so thank you so much for your patience. Thank you, Drake, for having me. And I'll share with you a little bit of these sounds.
Absolutely amazing. Thanks, Rylan. Another round of applause for Rylan. Incredible performance. There is some time for some questions. Does anybody have any questions in the room? Are there any questions online? Not at the moment. As you said that you're kind of beginning kind of explore all this stuff, and this is a work in progress. Where do you see yourself going with the gloves in the future? How do you?
Such a big question. I think what I really like about working with the gloves is that sort of expressive nature that Adam was talking about, right? Like you can really grab a sound live and kind of work with it. I think I can see that existing in a lot of the classical and sort of contemporary classical concerts that I work in, as we sort of see a push for chamber music to include more electronics, for sort of broadening what new music means and who those audiences are. I think it'd be pretty cool to do them with like the metal stuff on stage. I think that would be really fun. But again, as Azam says, there is like a focus pulling, but maybe I can get away with it because I'm the front man. I don't know. Yeah, there's maybe something in there about different contexts that could be quite interesting.
Right, that's interesting because it doesn't have, it doesn't have 1,000 years of kind of history behind it. It's a brand new interface. It gives you lots of flexibility, doesn't it? And how do you find the flexibility of using the different kinds of gestures? Is that to what extent does that influence then the music that you're able to make?
I think I spoke a little bit about how often you probably have seen in the performance that I was doing there that sometimes I'll do a gesture and Glover decides actually it doesn't like that gesture today. It was fine this morning, but and so much of that relies on the precision that you're able to do the gesture with every time. And when you kind of MIDI map, you train the posture, so you're kind of flashing the rock sign at it over and over. You're moving your wrist around so it recognizes kind of on what axis it's recognizing that posture. So I'm not sure if that's something that I'm doing, maybe not quite right, or if it's something that, maybe there's better ways of getting the posture to be recognized. But yeah, I think the next step is sort of that precision, and that would help a lot with the flexibility of what you're able to do.
Amazing. We have another question in the room.
I've just got one question, which is, okay. At what stage, if you're composing a new piece of music, do you bring the gloves in straight away at the beginning of that?
That's a very good question. It was actually Chris Halpin who gave me the very good advice of you always want to start with a gesture. If you're working with the gloves, composing for and/or with the gloves, you start with that gesture. And that's sort of how you build your visual narrative. So for me, there was this sort of like, again, it's the rock posture, but the way that kind of moves for me is like it's very fluid. I find it like quite a safe, reliable one. So I would start with something like that, and then I'd go, okay, well, what sort of sound do I want that to have? And then I'd go through the kind of Ableton sounds and think, okay, well, that's kind of, I want it to be a chord. These are the qualities that I want that to have, and I'd sort of do that internally, and then play about with kind of other settings. So yeah, I think for it to be very effective, you do have to integrate them from the ground up. Yeah.
That's interesting to me that you start with the gesture rather than the sound itself.
Cool. Yeah, me too.
Fantastic. Any other questions? No. Well, I think we'll leave it there. We have a question online. Hold on.
Just a comment from the chat to say thanks, Rylan. Great to hear your performance from Dottie.
Thank you.
I agree with that. On that note, let's another huge round of applause for Rylan Gleave. Thanks so much. So that concludes the first part of tonight's presentations. We're going to take a 15-minute break. Just a note for people online, we have had some issues with the sound, and we're going to do some more testing in the break to try and fix it for the second half. So please turn your sound off just in case we have any issues. So apologies for that, but we are working on it. Everybody in the room, if you want to have a go on the MiMU Gloves, please do. We'll be back in about 15 minutes. Thanks very much. Hi, folks. Welcome back to the second half of our evening this evening. This part of the evening is a presentation by Amble Skuse Bosko Begovic. They are joining us online. They can't actually see us because of the complexities of cameras, but they can hear us. They are talking about their collaborative approach, a really different kind of approach to what we've seen before to using the MiMU Gloves. So please give a warm round of applause to Amble and Bosko.
Hi, hello everybody.
Hiya. Yes,
Can
we
you hear
can.
me?
We can hear and see you brilliantly.
Amazing, excellent, thanks. Hi. So I am Amble and I am a woman in her 40s. I've got short brown hair, I've got clear framed glasses on and a green top with some Vincent van Gogh painting on it. Bosko's going to introduce himself when he starts talking, so don't worry about that. He's currently invisible. So I thought I would talk a little bit about how Bosko and I use the gloves together. It's slightly different from what most people use. So I would call the approach that most people use as a directive approach. So as Rylan explained, you make a pose and the sound is connected to that pose. So you know, if I do this, then I'll get that sound. If I do this, then I'll get that sound. When I lift my arm, the chord will increase in volume, and when I drop my arm, the chord will go down in volume, or whatever you choose to map it to. The way that Bosko and I work together is slightly different in that we work in a non-directive way. So the gloves are mapped to things in Ableton, but we don't really know what will happen and well, I know what they're mapped to, but I forget really quickly because it's part of my disability. And then Bosko wears the gloves, so I map the gloves to sounds, and then Bosko puts the gloves on and moves in the space, so he doesn't know what they're mapped to, he doesn't know what sounds are going to come out, and because he's not a technological person, he's a movement artist. He is just working in space, trying to find the sounds. This will become more clear, I think. I think if we could play video 2, which is the one that I put in the Dropbox yesterday, that'll explain like how I map the gloves to Ableton, and it might become more clear through that video. So I'm just going to show you how I do the processing with the gloves with the effects in series. So you can see here I'm on this channel, which is basic brush, and it makes this sound. It's quite boring. And I've got at the bottom here I've got portal, robot drums, overdrive and a flattenator, and that's mainly just to stop it just peeking out at the end there. So I'll pop that on. And that's just going to stop us peeking out when I put the distortion on. So the first effect in the chain is portal, and it does this. And then I've got 2 macros which allow me to change the different parameters. And the one I'm using is macro 1, so when it's up it sounds like this. And when it's down, it's going to sound like that. So then that one's on. I'm going to put robot drums on. Put that down to now. So that's the clean sound. And then if macro 1 is down, and you put the dry wet up. If macro 1 is up, and you do dry wet, you get this. And I think I've also got frequency on the gloves. Obviously, if dry wet is off, the frequency isn't going to make any difference because the frequency is only affecting the wet sound, and we've got no wet sound coming through. So that's only going to make a difference if this one is up and doing something. So that's doing that. So those 3 can they're all relying on each other, and then the last one I've got on here is overdrive. So say that's on a dry sound, there's nothing, say the robot drums dry wet is down, the overdrive is going to sound like that. If the robot drums wet signal is calm, it's going to sound like. So the nice thing about having the gloves is that it allows me to have all of these moving at the same time, whereas if I was doing them like with the cursor, I can only move one at a time. If I have a fader board, I can move 2 or 3 at a time, but with the gloves I can move all of those at the same time. Then the second channel, much the same, just going to stop you. And then here I've got this sound, I've got this mini birds, which is quite nice to mess with. Got grain delay. I've got a metallic tail again, so and then I've got an EQ, and what I've done is I've put the frequency on a glove so it'll be different depending on what's coming through. If that's giving me that, it sounds like this. And again, I've got the flatinator on just so we don't blow our eardrums out. So those are all the effects I think that I've got on the gloves. Like that. So much fun. So just switch that on for a second. I'm going to make sure the gloves are muted. Yep, they are. So you can see here, I've got channels 22, 23, 24, 25, 27, 29, 31. Don't ask me why. And 4 of them are on the bells attack, which is the second sound I showed you, and 3 of them are on the basic brushed bells, which was the first one I showed you. And then those are attached to the gloves. So you can see I've got pitch left and right, I've got roll, yaw, fist and roll on the left, and then pitch, roll, yaw on the right. So if I put these on, hopefully, yeah, they're sending some in. Great. And then if I put these on, you should see some of those things. Like the different sounds you can find, sometimes it's nice to just stop moving and then just do tiny movements until you find an interesting sound. Just try to find a tiny sound pitch. Just try and find the sound you like. Like how far you can move before it changes into something completely different. So yeah, that's how we do it. So Apologies for that wall of noise. I hope it didn't freak anybody out. I should have put a trigger warning on that beforehand, that there are some kind of scrapey and bangy noises. So basically, when that's set up like that, what happens then is that Bosko can put the gloves on and move in space as a movement artist, and then he will be listening to what's coming out of the speakers and trying to work out like how that's connected to how his body's moving, and he'll move into different places and find a sound that he likes and kind of play with that sound and sort of try and work out what movements he can do with that sound and where it changes and where it goes back to zero, or where it distorts or whatever. And he'll talk a little bit more about that. So because everything's in series, which means one effect is affected by the next effect is affected by the next effect, what that means is you can never really guarantee, like, if I do this, then that will happen, because it will all depend on what the other hand is doing and where the dials have been left by your previous movement. So there's not a sense that I can say to Bosko, right, if you lift your arm, this will happen, because sometimes it will and sometimes it won't, depending on where he is in the space and what direction he's facing, and you know, whether his left hand is rotated or not. And so that makes it a really interesting kind of exploratory game for Bosko to explore the space and see what his body movements create. I thought I might show you a wee video of me improvising with finding a sound in a space, and just one little moment where it all sort of came together. So could we show the next video, please? So, I mean, that's just a short clip of me messing around with it, just to sort of show what's possible, I suppose. But then when you put the gloves on somebody who is a movement artist, lots of really interesting things happen in terms of like what Bosko's role is. Is his role there to create sound? Is his role there to make movement? Is he then having to control his movement based on what he's hearing, or is he moving and not taking any notice of what the sound's doing? So he has this kind of double role, which I think is a really interesting kind of thing to be doing. So I thought what I might do now is hand over to Bosko, and he can talk a little bit about what it's like to wear the gloves that have been rigged with this sound world.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Amble. Let me introduce myself again. My name is Bosko. I'm a white man in my mid-40s. I'm all dressed in black. I have short, dark brown hair. For context, I've been doing martial arts, movement, training my body for all of my life. So for me, it's a second nature. So when I started working with Amble and with the gloves, at first I just started doing what I do, improvising, and it's a fun thing to do. But there was a thing that I noticed, I'm creating just noise. So that wasn't satisfying. So I had to change the strategy. I had to look for more subtle patterns of movement. I needed to listen to sound a little bit different. And then I noticed something that was profound for me. I noticed that we don't have a correlation here between myself and the sound. We have actually a causation. And that is profound in a sense that it introduces a split in the movement itself, because I moved the way I didn't intend to, which is really awkward when you think about movement and the body. Body is really solid. We think of it as one. Like we never think of our body as different than ourselves. In the language, we kind of experience slips of tongues and stuff, but with body, it's never like that. But here, me working with the sound, it actually started unraveling the concept there, like in this strange dance between two strange entities, myself and the sound. And it was the form itself. It was like a relationship, because I was doing what I didn't intend to do. Nevertheless, I was doing it with the utmost dedication and focus. And it was almost like it was matching the desire itself. So it changed me and I changed it. And we were like, me and the sound we were both shape in being the cause of each other's movement. So that was a profound, in a sense that I, instead of just moving, doing my thing, my patterns, I became a tool for shaping the sound. And in return, the sound changed my movement and into what? Into not becoming mine anymore. So that was a profound change for me, in a sense that I'm always searching for concepts while I'm doing the movement and stuff. And this was creating a concept in real time, in all actuality. So for me, it's like a holy grail of thinking, of doing art, of ultimately performance. So that was my experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Bosko. So we've got a couple of videos of Bosko using the sensors, so you can see what he's talking about. I think the first video is like one of his very first trials with the video, with the MiMU Gloves, and then we skip forwards to like a couple of years later where he's sort of integrated it more into his practice. So could we play the next video, please? Thank you. And then maybe the second video, the next video would be good. can see a kind of progression in the way that he's moving from the first iteration, where he's doing mainly martial arts movements and allowing the sound to come from the martial arts movements, and then in the second film, where he's kind of more symbiotic with the sound, and his movement is becoming adapted by living inside glove world, if you like. And so that kind of, for me, that really resonates with disability theory, because it's about interdependence, the way that we're working together. So I make the patch and the gloves and choose the sound worlds, but it really doesn't do anything until Bosko is wearing the gloves. And similarly, Bosko is doing the movements, but doesn't create the sound world without what I've kind of pre-prepared, and that neither of us is really leading and neither of us is really following each. There's a non-hierarchical kind of interdependence, and it becomes really collaborational. And for me, it's that kind of diffused power structure where neither of us has any control. We're just contributing our part and trying to support the other one in making their part work. And that kind of, for me, replicates a lot of disability theory about non-hierarchical structures, and that we're interreliant on each other, and that each person is contributing on their terms, but is being shaped by what everybody else is contributing as well. So as a kind of model for talking about disability, I really love working with Bosko in this way. Yeah, because it's that giving up of control and allowing other people to shape what's going on around you, and that interreliance that is kind of allowed by the gloves, by me putting the gloves on a movement artist. So yeah, I think that's probably everything we wanted to say. Is that everything you wanted to say, Bosko?
Yeah, that's it. Perfect.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, you two. A round of applause, please, for Amble and Bosko. Super interesting presentation. So I'm wondering, are there any questions for Amble and Bosko in the room at the moment? Doesn't seem so. Do we have any on? We do have one over here, yes.
Hi, thanks for a really fascinating talk from both of you. Amazing. So it's just a sort of observation, really, to add to your discourse about the relationship between shaping, but sound shaping movement and movement shaping sound, and your incredible disclosure about interdependence and disability theory. I just wanted to say, as an improvisation musician who works with tech, that can we also see the way that you're working with an equivalence to improvisation and music? And I think it's just sort of extending that sort of improvisation. Sorry, I really feel like this is so key, and I really want to add to what you've said in terms of it. I think there's something about being in the live moment and the relationship to sound and movement that is also related to the way that improvisation musicians work with each other as well. And I think it's all kind of building up to something with the tech and the way that we're working at the moment. But that has roots in that. So, what would you think about that? Do you see your practice in terms of improvisation specifically?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things that I didn't mention before is that I quite often change the sound worlds, which sort of drives Bosko mad, because he's just found something and I'm like, oh, I didn't like that, and I've changed it on the screen, and he had no idea that I'm changing things. But we deliberately make it different every time, because what's really fascinating to watch is Bosko's intensity of exploration. And if it does the same thing every time, then you lose that kind of intensity. And so it is that kind of, like you're saying, that focus, that getting into the zone. And I think that's where it crosses over really nicely with martial artists. It's about getting into that flow, being in the moment, connecting with what's happening around you and adjusting yourself to what you experience. And so it's absolutely an improvisational practice, I would say. What are your thoughts, Bosko?
Yeah, well, there is nothing more to add. Like you said it perfectly. Yeah, it's really simple. I don't want to waste time. Like, yeah, I'm totally 100% with you.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. Are there any other? Yeah, there is one right at the back. I'm just going to run up to the back. There's one more question back here. Up the top of the stairs.
Hi, thank you for the videos and stuff. It was really cool. I just wanted to ask, because you spoke about the relationship between you two as artists and performers and stuff. But I wanted to ask if you felt like there was a third character of the technology. Do you feel like there's a relationship between you two and the technology as another person or being in the performance? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm going to let Bosko start with this one. What do you think?
Most definitely, you caught it really good, because it was definitely one more thing. I don't know if it is a person, but there was an entity there, and I was communicating with it. I was working with it all the time, and that's the relationship I was talking about. It is strange because I didn't expect that. I was expecting just to move the way I move, and maybe the sound will follow, and maybe I will find some rhythm with it. So kind of like dancing, but not really. And this wasn't it. I really needed to change myself in order to find a way to communicate with this strangeness that we can call some strange entity, and we can name it also technology. But yeah, there was that thing. There was a third in the relationship for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels a little bit to me like we've got millions of strings connecting us, but there's something articulated in the middle of that, so that when you pull on one string, it pulls something on another string, and there's that kind of constant multiple three-dimensional puppetry going on. And then obviously, you also have the tech, which has a life of its own. We've made a piece about how Bosko is kind of, I don't know if this is getting too rambly now, but Bosko is kind of code, and all he knows is movement. And then he wakes up and he discovers that his movement actually has an impact. It creates this sonic world, and that he has another dimension to explore, that he's moved from a purely movement-based being into a sonic and movement-based being. And then what that does to your consciousness, to discover that you're actually living, you have another dimension to explore. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's sort of how it feels sometimes, is that Bosko's been put into another dimension where his body does things other than just move and touch things. It creates a sonic world which is beyond what we're normally capable of as humans, in a weird way.
Wow, amazing. I mean, really, absolutely fantastic. Are there any, we've probably got time for one more question if there is one in the room. I can't see Deborah right now. Let me see if there are any online. No questions. Okay, I think we'll leave it there. Can we please give a huge round of applause to Amble and Bosko for what a really fantastic presentation. And also please to Adam Stark and Rylan Gleave for their earlier presentations. Great night. So that brings our night to an end. Thank you everyone for coming. It's great to see so many people here. It really is great. And thanks everybody for joining with us online. We also have to give a huge thanks to the City Bridge Foundation and the Arts Council for funding these events. Without them, this couldn't happen. It's really great that they do, and it's absolutely fantastic. So thank you to them. Also, huge thanks to our amazing BSL interpreters Lorna and Petra over here, who work amazingly, deal with a lot of ludicrous vocab and things that we throw out there every single time, which is super great. And also to Heather, our captioner online, huge thanks to her. Victor for running our sound at the back, and then also the DM team, Deborah and Rob in particular, who have, oh my goodness, wrestled the tech this evening. It has been a mission. So a huge round of applause for all of them, please. Please do, on the screen is a QR code for our evaluation survey. Please, please, please fill it in. It's really important for us. This is the evidence that we use to get the funding for putting on all of these events. It's absolutely vital that we have this. So please do fill out the evaluation. Give us your feedback. Tell us what you liked. Tell us what you didn't like. Tell us what you could improve. Tell us what you want to see in the next one. Tell us what we're missing. The more information we have, the better we can make these events. So please do fill that out. And also join our mailing list online if you want to hear more about these events in the future. Our next one of these, excitingly, is taking place in this room again at the Crux Festival, which is a sound and visual arts festival which happens every year. Absolutely amazing. Loads of great artists, loads of great music and visuals and tech going on. So come along to the whole festival, but also in particular come along to DMLab, because we will be here talking about more accessible music tech. It's going to be a really good one. We will be on the 19th of April. The Crux Festival is happening for that entire weekend, so do come to as much of that as you can. We are going to pack up super quickly. I think the gloves will be out for a little while, but not for very long if you're desperate to have a go. Come and talk to me or any of the other DM team if you want to talk about accessible tech or you think you have something you want to show at one of these events in the future. Again, thank you so much for coming. Thanks for everybody for taking part. We will see you next time.